Hey Aya, today's topic is climate change. What influences the climate in a negative way? What is probably the biggest reason? Let's start with the farmers. Our food is produced, stored, processed, packaged, transported, prepared, and served. At every stage, food provisioning releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Farming in particular releases significant amounts of methane and nitrous oxide, two powerful greenhouse gases. Methane is produced by livestock during digestion due to enteric fermentation and is released via belches. It can also escape from stored manure and organic waste in landfills. Nitrous oxide emissions are an indirect product of organic and mineral nitrogen. Fertilizers. Agriculture accounted for 10% of the EU's total greenhouse gas emissions in 2012. A significant decline in livestock numbers, more efficient application of fertilizers, and better manure management reduced the EU's emissions from agriculture by 24% between 1990 and 2012. However, agriculture in the rest of the world is moving in the opposite direction. Between 2001 and 2011, global emissions from crop and livestock production grew by 14%. This was driven by increased global food demand and changes in food consumption patterns. Due to rising incomes in some developing countries, emissions from enteric fermentation increased 11% in this period and accounted for 39% of the sector's total greenhouse gas outputs in 2011. There is still potential to further reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, such as capturing methane from manure, more efficient use of fertilizers, and greater efficiency in meat and dairy production. In general, meat and dairy products have the highest global footprint of carbon, raw materials, and water per kilogram of any food. Greenhouse gas emissions, livestock and fodder production each generate more than 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. By reducing food waste and our consumption of emission-intensive food products, we can contribute to cutting the greenhouse gas emissions of agriculture. Reducing the amount of food produced is not a viable solution. It might increase global food prices. This would make it harder for many groups around the world to access affordable and nutritious food. Producing more food out of the land that is already used for agriculture often requires heavier use of nitrogen-based fertilizers, which in turn release nitrous oxide emissions and contribute to climate change. Whether in Europe or the rest of the world, meeting the growing demand for food by using more land would have serious impacts on the environment and the climate. Converting forest areas into agricultural land is also not a solution, as this process is a source of greenhouse gas emissions. And it would also mean fewer trees, since trees produce oxygen. That's not a good idea either. Let's what some of these gases do to, for example, the air. First, methane. On a 100-year timescale, methane has 28 times greater global warming potential than carbon dioxide and is 84 times more potent on a 20-year timescale. Methane is a potent local air pollution and contributor to ozone formation, which itself causes serious health problems. Approximately 1/3 of global anthropogenic methane emissions come from the energy sector. The International Energy Agency estimates that 45% of those emissions can be mitigated. Given that methane is a saleable product in the form of natural gas, reducing methane emissions associated with human activity by 50% over the next 30 years could mitigate global temperature change by 0.2 degrees Celsius by 2050, a significant step towards keeping temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius. Second, nitrous oxide accounts for approximately 5% of total global greenhouse gas emissions. Agricultural practices account for approximately 78% of total global nitrous oxide emissions, with more than 50% of that coming from livestock production. Every emission of nitrous oxide stays in the atmosphere for over a century. Lastly, carbon dioxide. Too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is not good for the planet or other living creatures. While CO2 is a natural result of life, and a vital part of the growth cycle of plants, too much of it in the atmospheric bubble that surrounds the Earth traps the heat from the sun, raising temperatures on Earth. If humanity cannot reduce its CO2 output, the planet faces an uncertain future. Besides the effects it can have on the planet and the atmosphere, carbon dioxide poisoning can lead to central nervous system damage and respiratory deterioration in humans and other breathing creatures. In the past, this cycle remained balanced, with carbon outputs and carbon absorption running relatively even. The Industrial Revolution changed that balance. Carbon dioxide produced by burning fossil fuels for heat, transportation and manufacturing upset this balance. Since the Industrial Revolution, humans have been releasing CO2 from these fuels more quickly than it can be reabsorbed naturally through the carbon cycle, resulting in higher levels of CO2 in the atmosphere. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere has gone up by 40% since 1750. Methane traps roughly 30 times more heat than carbon dioxide. Methane comes from both natural sources and anthropogenic, human-related, sources. Natural sources include wetlands, bodies of water, plant-eating animals, such as elephants, kangaroos, and termites. Human-related sources fall into four main categories: natural gas-based, petroleum-based, agriculture-based. I don't know what it's like in other countries. But for example, where I live, Belgium, farmers who own cows have to pay taxes. Like taxing them is going to help global warming. Or does the earth want money now? People ask for milk and their meat. So it's not like they can have less cows or none at all. Still, let's look at the cows. Cows generate methane in two main ways, through their digestion and through their waste. What cows eat has a big effect on how much methane they produce. Digesting hay and grass produces more methane than corn. Are there any more causes? Yes. There are. Burning coal, oil, and gas produces carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide. Cutting down forests, deforestation. Trees help to regulate the climate by absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere. When they are cut down, that beneficial effect is lost and the carbon stored in the trees is released into the atmosphere, adding to the greenhouse effect. Factories are to blame for as much as 2/3 rds of the pollution that has caused climate change. As a result of the pollution that is created from toxic and dangerous materials into our environment, not only does the planet's ecosystem come under threat, but our own health is potentially at risk too. Factories might not be the sole contributor to the man-made damage that continues to be done to the planet, but they are certainly one of the biggest. Despite the efforts of governments the world over to reduce the amount of pollution that these factories pump into the atmosphere, there is still so much that has to change if we value our planet. Industrial factories have played a big part in the amount of air pollution that we as People have to endure the toxic gases that factories release into the air, combined with those added by automobiles on the road, mean that we have an increased risk of developing chronic respiratory disease, lung cancer, heart disease, and many other illnesses, diseases and conditions. Air pollution also has an effect on our wildlife and again could lead to species of plants and animals one day being made extinct. With all of this info, you might notice that there are a lot of factors. However, there are many factors we can't live without. A lot of scientists are looking for more solutions. What I'm about to say is my personal opinion, nothing scientific. We could start by stopping cutting so many trees. You could say, we need it for space. If we didn't have such a big population, this wouldn't have been a problem. Yet it's this way, and honestly the only thing I can say is build on a plot that has no more trees. Renovate or demolish on old, build to start new. What else could you think of? Oh yeah, paper, wood and cardboard. Trees need to grow 10-20 years before they can be cut and brought to the factory. But what would you think if I'd say a plant exists that only need to grow 6 months and has a lot more uses? It's called hemp. Hemp originated in Central Asia as early as 2800 BCE and was practiced in the Mediterranean countries of Europe. Hemp is grown in temperate zones as an annual cultivated from seed and can reach a height of up to 5 meters, 16 feet. The fiber can be used for twine, yarn, rope, cable, and string, and for artificial sponges and such coarse fabrics as sacking, burlap, and canvas. Some specially processed hemp has a whitish color and attractive luster and is used to make fabric similar to linen for clothing. Hemp textiles can be used to make shoes. Hemp fiber is used to make bioplastics that are recyclable and biodegradable. Hemp can also be used as an alternative to wood pulp in some instances. It is frequently used in papermaking and is a sustainable alternative to fiberglass insulation in buildings. It can also be used for hempcrete, kind of concrete, and wool. The edible seeds contain about 30% oil and are a source of protein, fiber, and magnesium. Shelled hemp seeds are sold as a health food and may be eaten raw. They are commonly sprinkled on salads or blended with fruit smoothies. Hemp seed milk is used as an alternative to dairy milk in drinks and recipes. The oil obtained from hemp seed can be used to make paints, varnishes, soaps, and edible oil. So honestly, hemp seems like a better option. Lastly, what can you do to help fight climate change? Many experts now believe that eating less meat would actually have a bigger impact. That was the video for today. I hope you learned more.